Views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
We need a bridge. We need a transition plan. We haven't seen it yet.
Tonight on Politics Now, fixing school funding so it follows students who need it most. Why the school district and teachers union say Governor Sisolak's current plan needs some fixing.
Risky driving behavior is a cost-benefit proposition.
The debate over using automated cameras to enforce traffic laws, the government agency pushing for them, and the uphill battle that lies ahead.
The problems that we have in terms of housing and housing assistance, they're not just federal problems.
Finding affordable housing solutions, HUD Secretary Ben Carson tells us the programs he thinks will make it easier to pay rent.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius and Patrick Walker.
Well, education funding is expected to take center stage at the legislature, and this week, lawmakers heard about the school budget for the first time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steve Sebelius.
And I'm Patrick Walker. Educators have been calling for a redo of the school's funding formula, which dates all the way back to the 1960s. And this week, well, they had their first chance. The complex formula made up of local, state, and federal revenue streams that pays for our state's K-12 public education is called the Nevada Plan, which dates back more than 50 years to 1967. Efforts to change that over the years finally gained traction just in the past couple of years, as former Governor Brian Sandoval and lawmakers implemented a weighting funded formula, part of a new Nevada plan. This is one area where the Clark County Education Association, the local teachers union, and the Clark County School District have a lot of common ground. The amount of money that goes to fund education breaks down to roughly $5,900 a student. The legislature has been giving schools more money, but CCSD and others argue that much of that money is tied to specific programs or services the state mandates that districts provide. The weighted funding formula is an attempt to get money to follow students to where it's needed most. Under the plan, English language learners bring in more money for their schools, and combined with Victory and Zoom schools, they saw $36 million in increased funding over the last 2 years. Governor Sisolak wants to roughly double that for the next 2 years to include additional funding for at-risk children. CCEA Executive Director John Velardita says it's just a start because completely changing school funding to that model will take years.
What we plan on doing is, trying to introduce some revenue streams at the local level, so that we can fund this and go in this direction.
That $1 billion is the roughly $1.2 billion state officials estimate it would cost in additional funding to implement a weighted funding formula that replaces the current funding model. Well, that is a major shift because that $1.2 billion we're talking about is roughly the same as what the state pays to the budget for all of Nevada's schools every year. So it would be, again, doling out what they send out annually.
Yeah.
While using automated cameras to snap pictures of speeders or red light runners, that's been illegal in Nevada for 20 years, but could be changing soon.
A new bill heard this week in the Nevada legislature would allow local governments to set up automated cameras to catch traffic scofflaws. Assembly Bill 43 was met with a skeptical audience of both Democrats and Republicans in the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. They questioned whether accidents would increase if motorists brake suddenly to avoid going through a camera-monitored intersection. They asked if cameras would be set up in lower-income areas where fines would hurt poorer drivers the most. And they asked why the usual presumption of innocence wouldn't apply. Tickets would be mailed to registered owners who would then have to prove they weren't driving the car in order to get out of the ticket. But the administrator of the state's Office of Traffic Safety told the committee that drivers are just taking too many chances.
Risky driving behavior is a cost-benefit proposition. If I commit a traffic infraction, will I be caught? Can I get away with pushing through this red light or with driving fast? However, few of us are ever on the road alone.
Also speaking in support of the bill were representatives from the Metro Police Department and the Nevada Conference of Police and Sheriffs, who said cameras could work when other efforts to get drivers to slow down have failed.
Well, despite that strong opposition here in Nevada, lots of other states use traffic enforcement cameras. I know Arizona, one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Nationwide, local governments in 23 states and the District of Columbia use those red light cameras. Nevada's one of 7 states where it's banned by law. There have been 4 attempts to repeal it since the ban was enacted in 1999, but based on this week's testimony, I think they've got a little ways to go.
Yeah, that's not going to be changing. Well, the 2020 presidential race is starting up already. Yeah, I know, right? With almost a dozen Democrats now declaring themselves in the race.
Nevada's status as a key early swing state seems to be holding up so far. California Senator Kamala Harris is holding a campaign event in Las Vegas on March 1st. It's at the Mirage on the Strip with TV personality Star Jones. Harris made several stops in Nevada during her 2018 Senate campaign, including events with Nevada's Democratic Senators Jackie Rosen and Catherine Cortez Masto.
New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is holding an event tomorrow in North Las Vegas. That one's open to the public, scheduled to start at noon. It's his first trip to Nevada as a presidential candidate.
And last week, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren made a campaign stop in Las Vegas. She addressed supporters at the Las Vegas Springs Preserve on Sunday, calling for universal child care and preschool, student debt relief, and Medicare for all. She also repeated her call for a 2% tax on the wealth of millionaires and billionaires.
Former presidential candidate and current Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson. He was in Las Vegas on Thursday. He was at the National Association of Home Builders Conference over at the Westgate Hotel and Casino. We met with him next door at the Las Vegas Convention Center, where he was checking out the new energy-efficient technology and new building materials on display. I asked him about his focus on new technology and affordable housing initiatives.
This is an incredible display. This is massive, but one of the things is there's a lot of new technology coming along, which really can be very beneficial in terms of efficiency, in terms of costs, and in terms of mitigation. Because, you know, even if something is slightly more expensive, if it eliminates the need to replace down the line, that's a bargain. And just beginning to update the way that we think about housing and bring technology into it, I think will help us. You know, we have a huge affordable housing issue going on in the country right now, and we really need to be thinking about the most economical, efficient, and effective ways of building. The problems that we have in terms of housing and housing assistance, they're not just federal problems. They're state and local problems, and it's only when those three entities work together effectively that you get the bang for the buck.
We see oftentimes during booms, like we're seeing here, we're no stranger to that in Las Vegas as well, that's oftentimes when those gaps between the housing gaps come in. So you mentioned incentivizing the private sector in these public-private partnerships. What are some of the things that HUD is doing to make sure that the private sector is doing their part as well?
Well, things like the opportunity zones, we're increasing also the amount of equity that's available through low-income housing tax credits and other types of tax credits, new market tax credits, etc. And really working with the states to enhance what they're able to do with our federal funding.
Well, trying to stop a rule rollback.
They've put people in place who now want to implode the CFPB, who want to take back all those rules.
Senator Catherine Cortez Masto tells us why she objects to removing restrictions that were put in place on payday loan companies and weighs in on the border wall.
Think Finley Cadillac.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Nevada Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto is now our state's senior senator after just 2 years in office, but she's been busy in that time.
I sat down with her for an interview this week and started with a question about a bill that would prevent the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau from removing restrictions on payday loan companies.
Unfortunately, the CFPB, when they passed that legislation or that rule, which was great, that was under the previous administration. Under the current administration, they've put people in place who now want to implode the CFPB, who want to take back all those rules, do away with everything, and open it up again. And my concern is, listen, the rule that was implemented went through a comment period, went through hearings, everybody got to weigh in, including the payday lending companies, because there's some legitimate payday lending companies out there, but there are many that prey on individuals.
Why not pass a law that caps interest rates in general in loans? Say 36%, that's it. Nobody can charge interest higher than that, and problem solved.
Yeah, because to pass a law, I need my Republican colleagues to support it.
Oh, yeah,
and right now, there's a challenge there, because unfortunately...
That would not pass, you think?
Right now, in the Senate, Republicans control. And when you control the agenda, you control which legislation is even heard. Mitch McConnell would never hear anything like that. And we've seen already what he has allowed on the floor of the Senate and what he hasn't. And that's been our challenge all along.
Do you think a wall would be ineffective? Do Democrats oppose the wall? Some say it's immoral. Some say it's too expensive. Do you think it would be an ineffective way to accomplish border security?
Yes, and I know that. And because of my work down there. When I was Attorney General here for 8 years, I made it a point of working with the Western Attorneys General on the border to address issues like human trafficking, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, money laundering that crosses the border because of transnational crimes. We established relationships with the AGs in Mexico to address those concerns. And I can tell you, the 8 years I was there, to finding solutions to addressing that type of crime that's crossing the border, not one time did a border wall come up. Because it's not effective. The
president, immediately after the bill was passed, he signed it, but he said, you know, I'm not happy with this compromise, so I'm going to declare a national emergency. I'm going to take money that's been previously appropriated for other projects by Congress, and I'm going to use it for a border wall. Now, you have a bill that would address that. You have a bill that would prevent him from taking that money from those other projects and using it for the border wall.
Well, here's the thing. Just because you disagree with our constitutional function, which is to appropriate funds, just because you didn't get your pet project as a president, you don't get to go around Congress. That's constitutionally, there are separation of powers. There's things that we are required to do. We appropriate the purse strings, and then he implements and moves forward and executes on that in the administrative executive branch. Because he disagrees with how we appropriate doesn't mean he gets to declare an emergency that he has manufactured. It's outrageous to me.
Well, there is a lot more of that interview on LasVegasNow.com. And Steve, you also asked her about the DOE's plutonium shipment here to Nevada, right?
Yes, she was not happy about that. And she said her next step is to head out to the Nevada National Security Site to see where and how that plutonium is being stored. Cortez Masto also sits on the committee that has oversight of the Department of Energy. She says she will do everything she can to make sure that the state and the federal government are communicating, and that includes holding up nominees if necessary.
Well, a hoax hate crime.
The mainstream media is what fostered this.
An entire group of people were absolutely thrown under the bus in this situation.
Our face-off panel takes on who is the victim and if there are any underlying causes to the hoax that has actor Jussie Smollett facing charges.
An alleged transparency bill without any transparency. A new proposal that would cloak the names of Nevada's public retirees. That's next.
only on 8 News Now.
Well, actor Jussie Smollett is now accused of pulling what Chicago police are calling a hate crime hoax. We asked our Face-Off panel about it. Here's KXNT radio host Alan Stock and Battleborn Progress technical director Mike Willoughby.
Just the big picture reaction to how this is played out. What do you think of all of this?
He gets what he deserves. You're not going to see a lick of sympathy out of me on this. You cannot, especially in a time where things are as heated as we are right now, you cannot prey on people's, insecurities. You can't, unfortunately, it did such a disservice to real victims and real instances of hate crimes, of violence against the LGBTQIA community, and it's awful. And an entire group of people were absolutely thrown under the bus in this situation by this man preying on the political situation in this country, the very divided nation that we have right now, for personal gain. I don't think it's going to undo any real progress. It's just unfortunate and hurtful.
It's pathetic. People like Maxine Waters continues to say that what he did was a result of Donald Trump instead of placing responsibility on him. I think you are correct that what this does to people in the future who make claims, it's the boy who cried wolf.
Correct.
And that's syndrome, and it's terrible. Yeah. Think about, if you want to think about blacks and gays, think about if you're Italian or Catholic or Jewish or any other minority you could think of, and people making false claims, and then the next time it's for real, people don't believe you. I put a lot of responsibility on him. I hope they throw the book at him. I hope he spends time in prison. He deserves.
He's facing down 3 years, and he deserves it.
He deserves more.
It was very, very similar to the reaction that you see, no matter what, right? No matter what, you will see the factions split almost immediately. Everybody takes a hard side. Without knowing the actual facts of the situation. Everybody wants the spiciest hot take straight out of the gate, and it does a disservice, right? It does a disservice to the actual victims of this.
The mainstream media is what fostered this. I blame the media more than anybody. They got onto this case right away in the national media, and everybody took sides right away. From CNN to MSNBC to ABC, CBS, NBC, all of them took sides right away, and they tried to blow it up out of proportion. And they said, "Look what happened to this poor guy. Oh my God, we got to be sympathetic and let's look into it." There are people who are critical of the fact that the police in Chicago allocated so much resources to find out what the truth was when they should have done that. If it was truly a hate crime and the guy was really beat up, and he was beat up because he's black and gay and everything else, they should have allocated resources toward it. They looked into it, and what they found out was this guy is one sick kid, and he has got to be brought before the courts, and I believe he'll serve time in prison. And he'll be thrown off his Fox show in no time.
I think that's a done deal.
This is a career ender.
Well, you can also watch Alan and Michael debate presidential candidates who are starting to come to Las Vegas, the quick approval of the background check bill, and whether a citizenship question should appear on the U.S. Census. That's on LasVegasNow.com. Look for political news under the News tab. Patrick?
All right, Steve, this is Eye on Carson City, where we keep you up to date on some of the other things that are happening up at the state capitol. State Senator Ivana Cancela wants to change the Nevada law that requires informed consent for abortions. The Democrat says she is introducing what is called the Trust Nevada Women Act. Current state law requires physicians to describe the medical procedure to the patients and tell them about the emotional and physical impacts. It also requires physicians to tell women how far along they are in the pregnancy. Another bill would create a sexual assault survivor's Bill of Rights. It's a large bill, but includes a timeline of 90 days for rape kits to be tested. Victims can request to have a counselor with them at all interviews. It would also provide a website where victims can check the results of the rape kits. And State Senator Julia Ratty of Sparks has once again introduced a bill that would keep the names of government retirees secret. Senate Bill 224 would specify that a retired person's pension The amount of that pension, years of service, last employer, and annual pension amount would be public, but the retiree's name, that, however, would be declared confidential. Steve, this is a bill that comes after years, really, of litigation against the public employee retirement system, which we more commonly refer to as PERS.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, PERS has gone to great lengths to avoid revealing retiree information that's linked to the name of the retiree, keeping that away from media and watchdog groups. PERS says they're just protecting their members from identity theft and fraud, but critics say the agency is thumbing its nose at the courts and just refusing to provide what should be public information.
Well, Democrats in Congress and attorneys general around the country are working to stop President Trump's border wall national declaration. We'll talk about that.
It's Tow and Dodge in the Valley Auto Mall, number 1 for...
You're watching Politics Now.
President Donald Trump has declared a national emergency to build his border wall. So what happens next? Our Washington, D.C. bureau correspondent Alexandra Limon explains the plans to stop the declaration. Let's talk a little bit about the president's emergency declaration. Some lawsuits stemming out from behind that. Congress is, there have been some plans bouncing around to try to oppose this. So just give me a picture of where we're at right now.
That's right. Several lawsuits have been filed now to try to block President Trump's emergency declaration. And one of those lawsuits is asking a federal judge to issue an emergency injunction. So this would be a temporary restraining order that would block the president, at least temporarily, from shifting money to build the border wall, at least while these cases work their way through the legal system. Now, separately from that, you mentioned Congress is working on a resolution of disapproval, also to try to block the president's emergency declaration that is expected to possibly be voted on in mid-March in the House, and it is widely expected to pass. So if that happens, then Senate Democrats would try to force a vote in the Senate, because remember, they are in the minority, but they would need at least 4 Republican senators to join them in order to make that resolution successful in the U.S. Senate.
What effect then would a resolution have should it pass?
Well, if it's passed by Congress, it would then head over to the president, who would then have the ability to veto that resolution if he so chooses. And if things go that route, things would definitely get pretty interesting on Capitol Hill.
Well, Democratic Congressman Stephen Horsford has been named to a leadership position in Congress. Horsford will serve as a senior whip for the Democrats. He joins fellow Nevada Congresswoman Dina Titus, who's also on that senior whip committee. And Nevada Republican Party Chairman Michael McDonald will be on his party's committee for the 2020 Republican National Committee in Charlotte. McDonald was also on the committee for the 2016 convention. That one was held in Cleveland.
Well, this is what to watch with a couple of bills that drive passionate debate. They have some hearings scheduled next week. On Monday at 3 o'clock, a state Senate committee will take on the assisted suicide bill for terminally ill patients. It has lots of sponsors. It's SB 165. That same bill did not pass in 2017, but the legislature has a much different makeup this time around. And on Tuesday at 4 o'clock, an Assembly committee will take up a bill that would institute the national popular vote in Nevada. That's AB 186. That would mean that Nevada would just give its electoral votes in a presidential election to whoever won the national popular vote instead of which candidate won here in Nevada. So that one also, I would think, would generate a lot of talk as well.
Oh yeah, that's going to be it's a hard sell too, right? The state of Nevada votes for candidate X, and we give our votes to candidate Y. That's going to be a tough one. Well, that's our show. Thanks very much for watching Politics Now. You can email me, sSebelius@LasVegasNow.com.
My email, pwalker@LasVegasNow.com. Stay up to date online. We'll watch you right here every Saturday.